It's not always easy to understand what to do to enhance an image, but learning a few things about color harmony certainly helps. In color theory, color harmony refers to certain pleasing color combinations. For example, complementary colors, which means colors that are opposite to each other on the color wheel, or analogous colors, which are next to each other on the color wheel. By tweaking the colors in your image into harmony, it helps to create an image that is pleasing to the eye. Okay, let's see what we can do to enhance this image and bring the colors into a more harmonic color scheme. Where I want to start out with is the highlights. What I want to do is just get in and compress them a little because they are a little bit on the sharp side. So we're going to right click on our first node. I'm going to add a serial node before this one, and we're going to head on over here to our custom curve, and I'm going to make sure that we have our default anchors selected. I'm going to simply turn the second from the top one off, or disable it, basically remove it altogether. Grab that topmost point and bring it south just a little bit. Now if you'd like this curve to be a little bit smoother, we can turn on those editable splines and just smooth it out just a little bit. And if you take a look at our lights up here, I turn the node on and off, you'll see how we've compressed them just to make them blend in with the overall image just a little bit better. All right, so let's bring our skin tones back from the original source. And we're going to do this by adding a parallel node to our green node. So let's add that right here, add parallel. We're just going to give ourselves a little bit of space here. Perfect. All right, now you might be thinking to yourself, well, why do we add a parallel node? Well, first, we're going to be piping in from our source, and second, we can mix this with our green tone node to make it blend better into the environment. So what we are going to do is drop down to get access to all of our different curves, and I'm going to be heading on over to the hue versus saturation curve. Now we want to add some red back in, so I'm going to select red, and we'll stick this up somewhere around 1.6, 1.7. We'll put it roughly about there. Now take a look at the before. This is actually the after, and then the before. You'll see, again, just a little bit more life to our talent. Now, the only catch with doing what I've just done is that I now need to do a little bit of a hue shift to push the hue back towards a little bit more natural tones. And we're going to do that with another parallel node. So let's add a parallel node. Once we have the parallel node there, we're going to head on into the hue versus hue curve. Let's click on that red color once again, and we're just going to rotate our hue or bring it north up to somewhere around, I don't know, 10, anywhere between 10 and 15 I think is pretty good. Nice. Again, much like we've done before, let's disable the node and re-enable it. You'll notice, again, a very subtle change. Now, let's add a node after our saturation node. Again, right click, we're going to come down to add node. We're going to add a serial node right here. And what we want to do now is we want to isolate certain colors that are jumping out at us to bring those tones closer together. Now, the two that stand out to me are this color blue right here and this color red right here over our talent shoulder. So let's deal with this color first. Now, with the node selected, the first thing I want to do is isolate that area. We're going to do it with a power window. Simple circle. That's a little bit on the big side. Let's bring it right down here. Let's position it right about there. We can soften it out just a little bit. Now, once we've isolated the area, we can come back to our curves. Because we are adjusting the saturation of a hue, we want to make sure that we are on hue versus saturation. We're going to eyedrop that color. You'll see it picks the very specific hue here. And what I'm going to do is just bring this south maybe to about here. Now, if you don't notice a huge overall change, what you can do is just widen out the area here. Very nice. And now if you take a look, you'll see that blue color is not as blue as it was before and blends much more nicely into the overall shot. Now, let's deal with the next one, which is our thermos. I think that's a thermos over our talent shoulder. Now again, right click, I'm going to come down, we're going to add a new parallel node. You'll see parallel nodes are our friend, and let's just give ourselves a little bit more space here. Perfect. Okay, so what we're going to do now is, again, select that node. We're going to power window to begin with. Let's come over to power window. Let's choose that circle, way too big. Let's flatten it out just a little bit, or feather it out just a little bit. Let's position that over our Talon's shoulder. And the first thing I want to do is to create a little bit of a deeper red. Now to do that, I'm going to use hue versus luminance. So let's head back to our curves, hue versus luminance. Once we have it selected, we're going to navigate over, eyedrop that color, and just bring that value down to about 0.5. What I'm then going to do is switch over here to our hue versus saturation, and we're going to do the exact same thing. I'm just going to eyedrop that color, and let's bring it somewhere down around 0.5, I think. I think that's looking pretty good. Now again, as we always do, let's simply, with that node selected, turn it off and on, and you'll see it's just a much deeper red that blends much better into the overall scheme of things. Now, we're going to sharpen him up just a little bit. So I'm going to add a serial node here. Let's make sure we have it selected. We're going to head back to our power windows. Again, we're going back to our circle, you'll see. Beauty part about a lot of this is that we're not really changing how we do things. It's just a slight variation on each one. Let's give that a little bit of a feather. And what we want to do now is we want to head into our blur category, but not blur, sharpen. I'm just going to zoom in on his face just a little bit here. And I'm just going to pull that radius down. And you'll notice that as I do that, it adds a ton of sharpness to his face. I'm just going to go down 0.1. We'll put it back roughly about there. And I'm thinking that that is looking very good overall. Now, something that I do want to mention in these lessons, with this example specifically where we're getting in and sharpening up our Talon's face, I'm going to go a little bit to the extreme because keep in mind these tutorials are compressed to go into the web, and it's not very noticeable if I don't go a little bit further. So keep that in mind. Sometimes you're only going to want to use the absolute slightest amount of sharpen in this case than you would in the example that I did right here. Now what we want to do is we want to save this, and we want to take this concept and this grade and we want to apply it to the next shot. So let's right click, we're going to grab a still of this. And I'm going to head on over to my gallery. Let's rename this still, or rename the label. We're going to call this power grade. We'll call this finished grade. With our finished grade, I'm just going to call up my clips. I'm going to head on to the next shot, and we're going to take this and we're just going to apply the grade. We're going to take exactly what we just did and just modify it slightly to work with what we have. Everything works perfectly fine until we get up here to our isolation. All right, now we used one to isolate blue and we used one to isolate red. Now I want to keep that red isolation. Let's just rename this node red ISO. And I'm just going to remove that blue ISO. And this is the sharpen. So let's just see exactly what was going on here. I'm just going to turn my highlights on because I want to see exactly where that power window was sitting. And I'm just going to go back to power windows. Perfect. And I'm going to put it over top of the red right here. So let's stretch this out. Just expand it just a little bit. And that's going to work right about there to sort of take care of the red. And if I needed to get in and be more specific with the orange, we could do that as well. Now let's take the same concept that we just used right here and use it to sharpen up our Talon's face. Let's head right on over here. You'll see way too big, but of course what we can do is rotate that a little bit. We can shrink it right down. It's going to sit right over top of our Talon's face. And what we've just done in a few mouse clicks is taken what we'd created in the previous shot and brought the color over to the next shot, and with a few minor modifications, because we are in the same location, we can take what we had and make it what we have. Very simple to create harmony across this entire scene.